The speaker for today's session is Rahul Singh, Senior General Manager at Harbinger Interactive Learning. Rahul is a digital learning enthusiast and is passionate about helping organizations and leaders solve business challenges through intervention of learning technologies. In his career span of over 12 years in the digital learning space, he has helped a host of global organizations cutting across industry verticals in implementing a myriad of new initiatives around the digital learning strategy. We welcome you, Rahul. The stage is all yours.
Thank you, Rohan. Once again, a very warm welcome to all the webinar attendees on behalf of Harbinger Interactive Learning. Thank you very much for taking the time out to attend this webinar. We would definitely like this to be an interactive session, so please share your thoughts and questions during the webinar. We'll take them up at the appropriate time. Before we get started, a brief on Harbinger Interactive Learning, who we are, what we do. We are a global design and development company specializing in e-learning modernization, custom content development, artificial intelligence-based solutions, and designing unique learning experiences. We have more than 28 years of operational experience led by an experienced leadership team. Now moving on to nudge learning. So the first question that could come to our mind is, why are we talking about nudge learning today? Well, L&D stakeholders today have a greater and bigger responsibility than ever before. The need of the hour is to help employees by providing them effective learning solutions that cut through the noise of information overload and ensure that the nudge learning is made available in the flow of work. Let's look at the two key components in the learning ecosystem which are driving this need. First one is the modern day workplace. The modern day workplace is going through major changes. Concepts which were not being spoken about in the last 2 to 3 years have taken center stage now. One interesting shift is in the area of making workplaces more innovative. Here, attempts are to create touch points whereby employees can mingle, collaborate, and innovate with people from outside and within their organization at the same ease. And then, of course, there is the modern day learner. The modern day learner has very limited time for learning. In fact, a report says that 1% of a typical work week is all that employees have to focus on training and development. This learner is overwhelmed with things happening around him, her, and gets distracted easily. And of course, there is the reduced attention span. So to summarize, the modern day workplace and the modern day learner are compelling us to look at nudge learning in a serious way. Now let's take some time and let's look at the theory behind nudge learning. It's a proven concept. Nudge primarily is a concept in behavioral science and behavioral economics, which proposes positive reinforcement and indirect suggestions as ways to influence the behavior and decision-making of groups or individuals. A lot is already out there in the context of nudge, which has been successfully practiced. It would be very interesting for us to know the variety and complexity of problems that are being solved by nudge theory in application. For example, international institutions such as the World Bank and UN agencies have been trying to improve the basic standard of living for people across the globe using nudge theory. They have specific business units known as nudge units to deliver these results. Now let us take a look at a very particular case and very interesting case in a little bit detail wherein nudge theory has been successfully implemented to deliver results. Richard Branson of Virgin Atlantic teamed up with economists to try and nudge Virgin Atlantic's pilots to use less fuel by using a variety of behavioral interventions. So they decided to use nudges to steer pilots towards conserving fuel, and it produced significant results over a period of time. Amazingly, simply informing the pilots that they are participating in a study of fuel usage was a nudge enough to save them about 3 million pounds and also reduced carbon dioxide emissions significantly. The Virgin case demonstrates that people don't need a shove to adopt desired behaviors. This case exemplifies that a nudge can be sufficient to achieve the desired results. Now, the next question could be, why is nudge learning relevant? So the nudge theory in today's context is highly relevant and useful for L&D professionals. We'll take a look at the three key challenges that are advocating the need for nudge learning in the modern day workplace. And they are A, knowledge retention, B, transformation from a culture of training to a culture of learning, and C, the completion syndrome. Knowledge retention. I mean, we all have been speaking about this. We have been facing this challenge. This is a challenge that businesses are facing today in terms of ensuring knowledge retention for a better ROI. We can spend hours in training and come out of it feeling you have learned a lot, but then suddenly the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve starts kicking in. And even before you realize, you do not recall majority of things learned during the training. It is found that almost a whopping 60% of the knowledge is lost in less than the first hour of learning. And one of the key reasons for this is lack of reinforcement. Nudging your learners with reinforcement training material on a periodic basis could be one of the potential ways to improve knowledge retention. The L&D stakeholders today are geared towards shifting from a culture of training to a culture of learning. And again, the key aspects which are driving this need is the modern day workplace and the way learners want to consume content. The modern day learner likes to be in control. Learning to them is more about a journey rather than a destination. In this case, nudge without being intrusive is an excellent tool to make learners drive their own learning and be in charge of it. And then we have the completion syndrome. Former US President Dwight Eisenhower was not the only one who encountered two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. This was and is applicable to all of us. The urgent was never important and the important was never urgent. This situation arises out of a natural human tendency to seek pleasure in completing tasks known as completion syndrome. The modern day learners, in pursuit of satisfying the completion syndrome at their workplaces, are not able to find time for learning. And this is where L&D leaders have to bring learning in the flow of work rather than making it available outside the work. So now we understand the theory and the relevance for nudge learning. So how do we get started? The starting point could be simple by considering the three critical aspects: the framework, the principle, and the sweet spot. Now let's take a look at these three aspects in a little detail. The first one is the East framework. Now the good news is we do not have to reinvent the wheel. There is a proven framework which has been successfully used to deliver nudge. We need to look for ways that help us successfully leverage the East framework in the context of learning. It literally has to be as simple as it sounds: easy, attractive, social, and timely. This framework was developed and implemented by Behavioral Insights team in a joint venture with the British government. And this model has successfully delivered results both for policymakers and for citizens. Principle of least coercion. This is a principle around which nudge learning should pivot. Optimal nudging is all about preserving an individual's freedom, and in our context, it is all about giving our learners the freedom to consume content in a way best for them. And then finally, the sweet spot. The key to finding your organization's sweet spot to implement nudge learning is to identify an area which can create substantial business impact and has measurable results. Remember the Virgin Atlantic case? They found a sweet spot in reducing fuel usage and carbon dioxide emissions, and they successfully implemented nudge to achieve the objective. They were able to deliver measurable results. So at this stage, we would like to take a pause and request the audience if they can think of, if you can think of any sweet spots within your organization where nudge could intervene. Please feel free to type in your thoughts in the chat box. Okay, we have some responses coming in. One of them is one sweet spot potentially could be enabling the sales force to play a consultative role. Probably there is another one. Implementing a culture of safety and striving for minimal or zero incident rate in an organization. Right. So we'll move ahead. Thank you very much for sharing these thoughts. We'll totally agree with these. And if time permits, we can take some of these sweet spots and talk a little bit in detail about them. There's another one just come in, which is product features enhancement being shared quickly. Absolutely. This definitely is a sweet spot. Okay, so we move ahead in the presentation. This is the next important cog in the wheel. How do we go about designing content suitable for nudge learning? Micro is the way to go. Absolutely, no questions asked. The nudges are to be made easily accessible, should be attractive, allows the learner to collaborate socially, and should be available at the time of need. The content should be designed keeping in mind that the e-learning or the digital learning should be available in bite-sized nuggets, should be searchable and trackable. Now, many of us would have seen this image. In fact, this iconic image of a young girl standing in front of the raging bull at the Wall Street. This became a symbol for why we should not think that small is less powerful. And this fits in so aptly in the context of microlearning. The microlearning nuggets, if designed in the right way, can create a substantial impact. So if we design the microlearning nuggets in the right way, when to nudge? This is an important aspect of the entire concept. So absolutely the key is to make the learning available in the flow of work. And there are 5 key moments of need when learners could be nudged. And while designing the content, we could keep this in consideration. The 5 moments of need is a framework for gaining and sustaining effective on-the-job performance of employees and work teams. It has a set of systematic and rapid practices for designing, building, implementing, optimizing, and evaluating complete learning ecosystems. Now, what are these 5 moments of needs of the learner? The first one is new. When a learner is trying to learn something new for the first time. The second is more. When people are expanding the length and breadth of what they have learned. Apply. When people have to act upon what they have learned. Solve. When they have to solve a problem, resolve an issue because things don't work the way they should. And change, when we want to bring in a particular change or asking people to adapt differently to deeply ingrained practices. We'll be mindful of the time as well, so we are just a couple of slides away from the Q&A session. Now, let's quickly take a look at some of the use cases, potential use cases of nudge. So, creating and maintaining a culture of diversity and inclusivity in the organization. But this is a case of new, more, and apply need of moment. In the pharma industry, ensuring that relevant stakeholders are kept abreast with the ever-changing FDA regulations and standard operating procedures, the moment of need here is new information. Performance support for your sales force who are typically a situational learner. This is a classic case of apply and solve moments of the need. And implementing and maintaining safety 2.0 in your organization. This is an example of a new and change moments of needs. All right, so now we have the content. So what is the last piece in the puzzle? What is the tech infrastructure that we require for nudge? The tech infrastructure has to be simple and scalable. We do not have to overtly think about complex or expensive systems to implement nudges. Let's look at some of the options that we have. Emails. In fact, to start with, it could be as simple as nudging your learners through emails. To demonstrate this case, let's take a look at a case from Google, wherein they had to train their managers on the importance of safe team culture. And they delivered micro-learning nuggets through emails, which they called the Whisper courses. Then we have the learning management systems. Your existing LMS could be good enough to deliver nudges. What it might require is a slight customization or integration with a third-party application. Then there is a wide variety of off-the-shelf learning experience platforms in the market, which are capable of nudging and doing things beyond traditional learning. And then lastly, there's custom solutions. You could have custom applications built which have the capability of nudging or implementing nudge learning. It could be a modern day LMS based on an open source technology or a custom mobile application which could perform things like nudging. To reiterate, the idea is to keep it simple and make it scalable. The tech infrastructure should not be a block when it comes to implementing the nudge. Well, with this, we come to the end of the presentation. We might have overrun by a few minutes, but we still have time for Q&A. So we welcome you to share your questions or any first-hand thoughts in the chat box. And based on the time we have in hand, we'll try to answer or comment on those. There is a very wonderful use case that has come from one of our attendees. So screensavers of company laptops could be another option. Absolutely. I mean, implementing nudge through screensavers of company laptops, definitely, that's a brilliant thought there. We have a question which says, can you please expand your mentioning of existing nudge applications that would fit inside an existing LMS? Okay, so we might not have the exact answer for this at this point of time, but it depends upon how flexible is your LMS for customization. Are you using an open source LMS, a proprietary LMS, or a third-party provider LMS? If the LMS providers are open for customization, then they could be customized for nudge. And existing applications, for example, let's say nowadays we use a lot of productivity tools like Slack or Skype for that matter, or Microsoft Team and those things. They could be good applications which could be integrated with the learning management systems to implement nudge. There's one question that comes to us which says, how to measure learning impact achieved by nudge? Right. So we said that we'll design the content in a way which it is micro, searchable, and trackable. And then we can have business rules written around the content, which could generate detailed analytics depending upon what is a particular business need. If the analytics that we want to generate do not, if the normal SCORM packages do not suffice that requirement, then we can go a step further and have XAPI compliant. Or if we are delivering these nudges through custom applications, we can have learning record stores integrated with them, which can capture detailed and very specific analytics, which can help us, drive business results and make business decisions. There is one other question to us, which says, when it comes to designing digital content for Nudge, is it applicable only to new content development, or is there a way we could possibly look to repurpose existing legacy content? That's a very good question. And in fact, the answer to this question is Nudge could be implemented in both the cases, wherein we are starting to develop content from scratch, or if there is existing legacy material, we can easily repurpose that existing legacy material, break them down into instructionally sound microlearning chunks, and use them for implementing nudge learning. There are two questions which are similar in nature, so we can take them together. First one is, how is nudge relevant in an instructor-led training environment? And is nudge applicable only with digital content? So the answer is no, nudge is not only applicable with the digital content. It could be used in multiple scenarios. Purely from the scalability perspective, we might have to adopt the digital way, but let's look at a scenario wherein we are teaching learners on a particular concept in a classroom training program. It's a 2-day training program. And if we pick out very specific learning objectives or the key learning objectives of that 2-day training program and make them available as bite-sized micro-learning nuggets, and we push them as reinforcement material. So on the fly, that's kind of a use case that we could think of when it comes to implementing nudge around ILT. It will basically work as reinforcement. There was one more sweet spot which was mentioned from one of our attendees. I'll just call that out. Improving sales performance. Absolutely. That's definitely a sweet spot. There's one question which says, where can I find more case studies of successful nudge learning? Well, to start with, Google is one good resource. Richard Thaler in the year 2017 is professor in behavioral economics, has won the Nobel Prize for for his research on nudge theory, and he's published a book as well. So that's a good resource to look into. And then there are multiple use cases. We can look at the British government, the East Framework use case. It's available on the public domain. And then there are other use cases in terms of Uber. Uber used nudge to motivate their drivers to do overtime. So there are multiple use cases, and you can find them on the web for sure. We do have some more time. We can definitely take some more questions, and not just questions. If anyone has any thought as to what they feel whether nudge could be relevant, as an L&D stakeholder, or nudge might not be relevant, any pros and cons. There's one more sweet spot that was called by one of the attendees. It's driving the company culture and values in the times of gig economy. Absolutely. So we'll wait for, probably a minute or two. We'll request our attendees if they have any questions before moving ahead. There is a thought that has come in from one of our attendees. Nudge is for reinforcement versus concept teaching. Is this correct? It's a little difficult to answer this, but I'll make an attempt. Yes, absolutely. Nudge is a very good way to reinforce learning. But the idea is also to make the learning available in the flow of work. And if you look at the 5 moments of the need, it could be new content, more, something to apply, a business challenge to solve, and change. So there's one interesting question. Can nudge learning be used for K-12? Yes, I think the fundamental principle behind nudge is we have all been nudged since childhood by our parents, by our teachers, by our friends, by our colleagues, by our managers. And they've always nudged us to learn new skills and excel in them. So absolutely, it would be applicable in K-12 scenario as well. Another question that has come to us is microlearning and nudge same? Well, yes, to a certain extent, because nudge is only possible when it is being done in a microlearning format. We can absolutely not nudge a learner with a 30-minute course. So microlearning is a key component of the nudge learning ecosystem. The next question that comes to us is, what are some mediums to deliver nudge? So I'm not sure, I'll have to request to kind of elaborate this question a little bit. In terms of when we say medium, are we talking about the tech infrastructure, the emails, the learning management systems, or custom applications? Right, yeah, so the answer is yes. These are some of the ways. It could be as simple as emails, and as one of our attendees said, as simple as something as a laptop screensaver. Text messages are nudge. And then, of course, you can implement it through learning management systems, learning experience platforms, or custom applications. Right, so thank you very much for this interactive session and the participation from the attendees with your thoughts, questions. We hope that we have been able to answer all the questions. If not, we'll definitely, get back to you with detailed answers via email. So with this, I hand it over to Rohan to close this webinar.
Thank you so much, Rahul, and this was really enlightening indeed. Thank you all to all of our learning and development community members for taking time out for today's webinar. We hope it was really insightful for you as well. And we will arrange for the webinar recording to be sent across to you. In case you have any queries or questions, please feel free to drop a line at info@harbingerlearning.com, and we would be more than happy to answer them for you. We would also like to let you know that we would be more than happy to provide you with a one or no cost associated consultation if you were thinking of implementing nudge learning at your organization. Again, please feel free to drop a line at info@harbingerlearning.com. Once again, thank you very much for taking this time out for today's webinar, and hope to see you soon.